Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee Chat with Lindsay and Neely.
Yes. Hello and welcome. We have our coffee with us today.
We do.
Did we preemptively strike with sharing what the contents of our coffee cups are?
I mean, Sing It hasn't commented yet, so I don't feel like we can.
It's valid. We're going to hold on for just a moment.
Patty is here. I see Patty first in the chat this morning.
Hello.
Gary is here. Hello.
Hi,
And Haley
Gary.
is here.
Hello.
Oh, and Jen is here. Hello.
How is it going, everybody?
Welcome. Oh, Rickwin is here. Happy Wednesday.
Hi. And then Cheryl.
And Cheryl from West Virginia.
Virginia.
Welcome. Gary has his Diet Pepsi. I mean, I still don't Sing It, but I have coffee with cream.
I have decaf caffee.
Oh man, we are off to a good start today. We should start a coffee company.
Reverse it.
Decaf.
Decaf caffee.
I love it. Sing It is here. Sing It is here.
Fantastic. But today I chose to put some cream in my decaf coffee.
Excellent. We are wild today.
We are struggling hard today, everyone.
But we're here. We're here.
And by we, I mean me. Just me.
Nancy is here. Hello. Nancy loves cookie. I don't know that I've seen that.
Nancy is amazing. She won my giveaway.
Oh, did she?
Yes.
That's exciting.
Excellent.
Yes.
Risa's here.
Oh yes, Risa is here. Having a beef and egg bowl with coffee and adaptogen. Beef bowl seasoned with chili lime Redmond seasoning. So good. That does sound very good. I had
very delightful.
A leftover part of a keto chow from the fridge this morning because that's what was there and what needed to be eaten. And so I did.
Yeah.
But your breakfast sounds so much better.
My breakfast was actually pretty all right.
What was that?
I made miniature frittatas for dinner a few nights ago, and so I had 3 of those left over, so I ate those.
Nice.
And last week we talked about biscuits and gravy and smash burgers, and we still had a biscuit left over, so I managed that. So it was a leftover morning for myself as well.
Excellent.
Just a little more interesting than just a drink.
That sounds fantastic. When you have good leftovers, it's a good day.
But to be clear, keto chow leftovers are still fantastic.
Right. It was one of those where it was like it had been sitting in the fridge for a few days and like I had it was just one of those where it's like I just need to drink it even though I don't really feel like it. I just need to get it finished. So, it's always more exciting when you're like, "Ooh, what do I want?" And then you pick, your flavor of keto chow or whatever you're going to cook and then you cook it all up. It's so special.
Right.
Then there are those moments where it's like, yeah, it's good, but it's like I just needed to use it up.
Right. Yep.
Yes.
Indeed.
Gary says, I've been away because a dear friend passed in February who was
so sorry to hear that.
Family. I've been taking her sister and her mom around when they've asked. That's very nice.
That's very generous of you.
So glad that they have somebody. Beth is here from Las Vegas.
I was there this past
here from BC, Canada. Infinitely blessed. Hello.
Hi.
Mary, happy Wednesday, eating white Florentine chicken crust pizza for lunch. Now that sounds
very fancy.
Delicious. That sounds really good. Let's see. Oh, Sing It says, on my way to my favorite aunt's funeral. I'm so sorry, but we bring you joy. I'm glad for that.
Yeah.
Nancy wants to know if you got the address this time.
Yes, I did. So if y'all didn't know, I have a website and my name was actually already it was already a website. So I had to go in and add another letter in order to make it, different. So I
Yes.
could actually
Yes.
have my website. And whenever I told Nancy what my email address was for her to be able to send things to, I was typing faster than my brain could compute, and I wound up typing that extra letter into the address. So that
So
was a
fun.
fun moment for me when I realized, dag nabbit,
Yeah. It's frustrating when people can't just read your mind
well, not
because
even
it was
that.
right in your mind.
I'm just like my brain sometimes, and just like the mental connection to the physical body, sometimes there's a glitch.
I understand. I have been there many a time.
I don't know that I'll ever graduate away from being there, to be honest.
True. True. Let's see who else is here. Penny says, I'm having salmon covered with butter and pluck seasoning. That sounds good.
Salmon is one of the few
Delicious.
sea aquatic creatures that I am like willing to choose on a menu.
Yeah, salmon is delicious. Nicole is here from New Hampshire. Let's see. Risa says the pluck seasoning is the best. I probably put some in the beef when I originally cooked it that she's eating. Yeah. Yes. Um Anyways, if anybody has any questions for us, feel free to put those in the chat. And because these coffee chats are community oriented. So if you have any questions or topics that you want to bring up, we're totally open to that. I did have a little topic that I wanted to get to, unless anyone has something else pressing that they wanted to chat about. So yeah, let us know. Did you have anything specific, Lindsay, to get into?
The only thing that I was really thinking about is, for the past 3 weeks running, we've talked about restriction, and I kind of wanted to touch back on that again, but not in a way that's like the way we've been doing it. But if we
Same.
don't, if we don't get to that, I won't be crestfallen. I'll be
Okay.
okay.
Well, I kind of had the same idea. Um, of course. Like touching on the same kind of thing, but a different aspect. Okay, so
Yeah, different
I'll
vantage point. You go first. You go
okay.
first.
Okay.
My thoughts
So
are not
and we'll
fully.
see if it's exactly the same thing that
I
so
have my
first
note card.
I'll give a little recap for anyone that hasn't been with us the last 3 weeks. We have talked about the idea of restriction and how
Mhm.
it's just seems in the diet world that the word restriction equates to bad. It's a
Right.
negative thing. And so there's all kinds of like trying to finagle ways to say, oh, this diet is not restrictive. My argument is that that is unhelpful for a lot of people. And what would I think, this is only my opinion, would be more helpful is to um, just be honest with it and say, yes, it is restriction. You are restricting yourself from all kinds of things that, yes, do taste delicious a lot of the time, that are all around us. And there are times where it is restrictive and it will feel restrictive. And then on top of that, something like, here's why the restriction that I'm putting forth, I think is worth it. The why it's worth it for me, why it might be worth it for you to give a try. And then when you do come up against those times where, man, this feels restrictive, you have something to fall back on that's like, okay, but the restriction is worth it, not just the empty promise that it's not restrictive. Okay, so that's kind of a recap of our conversation the last few weeks. My thought this week was that maybe we could chat a little bit about strategies for things to not feel restrictive, because my argument is that's a completely different thing. Because when anyone says, oh, is this diet restrictive or this diet is restrictive, the immediate response you hear from people is, it doesn't feel restrictive to me, it's not restrictive to me, which is a completely different thing than it actually being a restriction. or a
Yeah.
reduced, number of foods you can eat or time you can eat or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So instead of, we've kind of defined if we define those 2 things as separate things and we accept, yes, any diet you go on, carnivore, keto, vegan, South Beach, time
Whole
restricted
30.
eating, Whole30, they're all restrictive
Yep.
in their own way. Maybe you could classify them as more or less in some
Sure.
kind of a way. But they're all forms of restriction. And let's just
Mhm.
take the idea of that being bad, out of our head and just be like, it's restrictive. Sometimes and like people have said, even last week on our talk or maybe the week before, we put restrictions on things all the time, and it's oftentimes very good. We put restrictions on our children, and we've all met children who didn't have enough restriction in their life, and they're not pleasant to be around, and all that stuff. So just the idea that restriction is bad, we can let go of and say then we talked about like what's our favorite restriction? What restriction are you doing this month for your restriction diet? Um, and so yeah, we kind of talked about that. But my thought today was um shifting the focus to feeling restricted. Because that really is, I think, more important than how broad the list of foods you're allowed to eat is. Because, like we talked about, if you counted up all the foods you can eat as a vegan and all the foods you could eat as a carnivore, I bet the vegan list is longer. Like, I know there's a lot of things you could eat on carnivore, but I bet the vegan list is very long.
Yeah.
Uh, Personally, I think I would feel more restricted on a vegan diet. You know, there would be days, of course, that I would feel restricted on a carnivore diet, but the feeling about it is really important. Um,
Mhm.
because like people have said, I feel or I feel less restricted on carnivore than I did on keto because when I did keto, I would eat, things with sweeteners and stuff, and I fill my mind, and I wouldn't be able to stop thinking about the food. And when I'm on carnivore, I just don't think about food. And so that for that, I think it was Ellie was saying that, or something similar at least.
Mhm.
For her, a trick for not feeling restricted is to, go carnivore.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the same for everybody. And so I thought it would be interesting to kind of talk about what kinds of things we do that allows our restriction to feel less restrictive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're using slightly different words than me, but similar ideas.
Of course. Yes.
And the way that my brain frames it is freedom, right? We all
Mm,
want to be free to make whatever choices we want to make, right? But there are levels to freedom. So if you want to have the like the largest number of foods available to you, you want food freedom, like food choice freedom, then you are going to be able to eat anything off of a grocery store shelf, like no problem whatsoever. But you have to sacrifice something for freedom. And in order to be willing, or in order to have the accessibility to literally any food on the market or that you can get your hands on, you are probably going to be sacrificing your health in some way. Whereas if you choose to be more restricted by narrowing your food selection options, you are going to find, you might, probably, definitely, maybe will find more freedom in your health, which means that you have more freedom
mhm.
in what you can do with the body that you have. So
Yes.
it's a trade-off. It's they're juxtaposed concepts. You can either eat anything and everything and have the probability of a lower quality of health and life, or you can limit what you have, lower the number of food options that you have, and probably increase your quality of life. Um,
Yes.
and so it's one of those things where that reframing like what you're talking about here, it sounds to me like reframing, like justifying why. The word means less opportunity to choose things. Like to be restricted means you have very strong parameters in
Mhm.
which you have to operate. But the why behind it, what is the freedom associated with that thing? Like Ellie from Nourishment Redacted, right? Isn't that
Mhm.
her handle?
Yep.
Um, she says, I need to be restricted to these parameters so that I am free from some sort of restriction in her mind to constantly be thinking about food. She's free. She has complete freedom from food noise when she goes carnivore.
Yeah.
When I eat keto, I have the freedom to fit in my clothes.
That's a good freedom.
You know, it's one of those things. I have the freedom to play with my children. I have these freedoms that I did not have before I was eating a keto friendly lifestyle. So
Yes.
the concept of like let's figure out what are the strategies to reframe our focus is a very very effective way to say I can deal with restriction and accept what that word means,
Mhm.
and also I can give it some context and some silver lining, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I think the way that you just described that is very holistic. So
Mhm.
instead of just like saying this diet is restrictive, you are looking at all aspects of your life and seeing
Mhm.
because you might have been restricted by, the clothes you could fit into or restricted from playing with your kids the way you wanted to. So you could look at all of the different restrictions in your life and
Mhm.
recognize that restricting your diet this much allows for actually overall less restriction
Right.
in and on the opposite side, more freedom. So
Right.
less freedom in your diet equals overall more freedom in your life when you're looking at
At
it
large.
holistically. So yeah, that I love that. Like just knowing your why, people talk about that all the time. Knowing your why, so that when you are faced with those times where it's like this restriction feels so restrictive when I can't eat the birthday cake or whatever it is, you're like, but let's look at overall, am I really more restricted
Yeah.
than when was allowing myself to eat the birthday cake? Or do these other freedoms like supersede that? So
Oh
I love
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Mhm. I
Um,
think we've got lots of people sharing
yes,
experiences here if we want to touch on those really quickly.
yes.
And we're
Let's see.
so you're wanting to maybe take this conversation toward the strategies
Yes.
to focusing on this restriction is doable because of these different tasks or these different
Yeah,
strategies,
okay, so for
playbook
me
kind of a thing. Oh,
yeah,
but I see all the people's.
I know, I do too. I'll just clarify real quick. For me, going carnivore did not give me the freedom that I see it gives certain other people.
There's the way to say it, isn't that?
And that's not that I did carnivore wrong or that they're not being truthful, it's that we're different. And what
Yes.
is freedom for me might not be freedom for someone else, and vice versa. What
Right.
feels restrictive for me might
Mhm.
not feel restrictive for someone else. Because, like, when I was carnivore, I felt like that was when I was almost in the worst place mentally with food, where I was so preoccupied with food.
Yeah.
And like even 3 months carnivore, no sweeteners whatsoever. Like I did it right. And I was so preoccupied with food, and it didn't feel like freedom to me.
Yeah.
For other people, I see a completely different response.
Result.
And
Mhm.
so, like, instead of thinking we need to find the right diet and assume that it does what it did for me for everyone, if we could just talk about the different strategies and tools that we find helpful for our own lives,
Yeah.
I think it could be helpful for other people because I know that there are people out there where they're like, I'm doing and I'm picking on carnivore just because it's easy, but it
Well,
could
it's
be
a very clearly
any.
defined kind of a way of
Sure.
eating.
Yes, and there is a hallmark to the carnivore diet and the people that talk about it, where they do talk about freedom and where they don't
Mhm.
think about food all the time, and so and I believe that that's true for them. I didn't feel that, and so instead of saying, "The carnivore diet does this for people when they do it,"
Blanket statement.
blanket statement. If you have trouble with food addiction tendencies or anything, then the carnivore diet will fix that for you. That wasn't my experience, and so and I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with there being a variation in what people need, and for some people, keto is that freedom for them because they have the freedom to have more of a variety of food, but it's also enough that it keeps the food noise down, like, slow enough carb that they don't get the sugar spikes, like, for them, that's freedom, and carnivore wouldn't be, and so just having a discussion about what works for us individually, I find that to be super helpful, because you can
Mhm.
go there are so many, channels, where people are teaching about carnivore or keto, and they make these blanket statements, and we've all watched them, like, we all watch them all the time, but to have just a conversation about, like, "Well, I experienced this. Well, I experienced this. This has been really helpful for me to think about it this way." Like, I think I find a lot of help in those kinds of conversations, um,
Right.
and
It's
that's
more of a sharing of ideas and not in such a way that makes it feel like, well, I use keto sweeteners and if you're struggling, then you have to use keto sweeteners because that'll obviously scratch the itch for feeling
right,
something sweet in your mouth. Like that
right.
you have to do it. It's the only way.
Yeah,
Of
it
course.
worked for me. And us as YouTubers and any of you watching that are I see Low Carb Spin is here. Any YouTubers probably resonate with recognizing those comments when they come through where it's like, you're having this problem because you do this. I stopped doing that and this
Therefore
happened.
it is.
And it's just like, or, say, this doctor says this and you're doing it wrong. So therefore that's why you're having this, it's easy to, try to take all of this stuff as scripture and be like, I will apply this truth to you. And it's like, well, I think there's more nuance than that. And what feels like freedom for one person may not feel like freedom for another. And we all get to make our own choice about what's worth it to us or not. And so for some people that really have struggled with health issues or food addiction, sugar addiction, it's worth it to them to say, I will never eat anything that tastes sweet ever again. It's totally worth it to them, and that's where they find freedom. For other people it may not be the case, and
Right.
and that's okay, and we can
Mhm.
support each other in wherever we're at, and not just, say, well, this doctor says that if you eat sweet stuff, you're going to be addicted to it forever. If you ever eat it, you'll be addicted to it forever. And you're like, well,
And
let's
I
have some nuance
right. And a lot of those doctors talk about how you should do this. And I think oftentimes the the phrasing you if you're having this, you should do that is not actually medical advice when it comes from the internets. It's not actually like I mean, well, like for their own protection, a lot of them will tell you, I am not your personal healthcare provider. We do not have a doctor patient relationship. Like Dr. Barry, I think he does a reasonable job at making sure to share that knowledge
here.
and make sure to remind his audience, like, hey, I'm going to tell you some absolute statements, but also they're like, I'm not your doctor. And it's hard because when people hear I'm not your doctor, they ignore that the moment that somebody like him with as much um, commanding presence
Yeah.
as he has says, you feel this way, you should do this. And I'm sure in the way that he is experiencing it, he's talking to the royal you,
Right.
the the
The standard American dieter.
plural you,
Yeah.
not the single individual person sitting right there at your kitchen table right this second. Like he might use all those words, but the reality is that he's trying to reach a ton of people, but
Yeah.
he uses the pronoun you when talking to a plurality of people, not
Yeah.
necessarily like, okay, or I don't know, I'll just say a name, Darren, sitting,
There's a
sitting.
Darren watching. I'm so sorry.
Because he's daring to eat something healthy.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then, like, I think about we'll just pick on Dr. Barry. He is trying to reach what I think of as, like, the standard American person, like, the
Sure.
standard Walmart shopper that just has followed the standard American diet all their life, and so you can kind of imagine what that person would be like, and Dr. Barry's message is what exactly, what they need, and but, you know, we're not all that average person, like, a lot of us who have been in, like, the health world for a while and have been searching and trying, like, it's just a little bit different of a person. And so,
Right.
like you said, he's saying you, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's talking directly to you, Lindsay.
This one individual person.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's
Right.
okay. And so, like, I can watch his stuff and say, "Yes, I fully agree with that, that this is the message that America," and I'm saying America because that's where I am. I know not everyone here is watching from the US, but I'm thinking, "Yes, that is what the like, that's the
The
message that
typical
yes,
American
the
looks like.
message that needs to combat the standard American message that we have grown up with." So, there you go. All right, we gotta get to some comments too. Okay,
Me too.
so I wanted to read this one from Jen. I am stressing. I saw my dietitian today, and in the last 2 months, I gained 8 pounds. I have been exercising for 2 hours a day and eating a ketovore
Ooh.
lifestyle for a year. I I
I'm gonna first of all say I commend you for making tremendous effort towards trying to get
yes,
a hold on your health. Your
yes.
tenacity in following that is amazing. But now I'm gonna let Neely. I just wanted to commend you. Your
No,
efforts
I
are tremendous.
totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah, and that is very hard to feel like you're doing everything right and
Hmm.
have things like this come up. And I've definitely been there. I'm still dealing with my own things. Um my encouragement is, and this is hard too because it does take time and money, but try to work with someone who can help you with hormones, things like that. Like, we can all do diet tweaks and exercise more or less, work on our sleep. Like, that's all great stuff to do. But one thing that I have really been made aware of in the last few months dealing with my thyroid issues and my hormone issues is that if something there is out of whack, all the lifestyle and diet tweaks in the world will not fix the problem. It's kind of like, my analogy is, it with the diet and lifestyle stuff, it's kind of like messing with a thermostat in your house.
Yeah.
Making these little tweaks to go up or down a few degrees, but when your hormones are off, it's like the windows open and there's a snowstorm outside. And you're like, because there were times where when I was dealing with my high heart rate and all these different things and my sleep was bad, and it's like, you know, I'm like trying to do breath work to bring my heart rate down and like all these like go to bed early and all these things, and it was like nothing made any difference. I had been working out, so consistently, yet my resting heart rate was going through the roof when
Hmm.
sorry, terrible. Um, and when you work out, your resting heart rate's supposed to be going down, but it was like all that exercising was not moving the needle at all with my resting heart rate. Like it was like trying to deal with a thermostat when my garage door was open and blasting a snowstorm in the house. And so it's not that the lifestyle stuff isn't important and the exercise and the eating right isn't important. Like, it's super important, but both have to, they both obviously interact, and
Yep.
it's like you can't have one without the other either. Like, you have to have both. But just trying to affect the hormone thing with diet and lifestyle can make you feel like you're spinning your wheels for sure. So, I mean, if you feel like you're doing everything right and you still like have these things where you're just not making progress, that's where, working with somebody that specializes in that kind of thing can be really helpful. The other thing I'll say is exercising 2 hours a day is a lot. And I don't know what kind of exercise that is, but one thing that was really important for me was making sure I had rest days. So it was really important for me to get consistent exercise because that was
Hmm.
the first struggle that I needed to overcome. But then once I was doing that, it was really important for me to make sure that I was also having rest days to recover in between. So, working out 2 hours a day, every day of the week for a consistent amount of time can affect your hormones and actually, cause some of the issues. So, that's the only thing that, like, sticks out to me. Obviously, I don't have a lot of information, but that's my
Purely based,
encouragement.
explicitly based on the context you've afforded us, there would be a few follow-up questions.
Yeah, for sure.
And working with your dietitian, I think it's great that you do have someone that you can talk to about these things. I would be curious to know, like, a variety of things like sleep, and then also what kind of intensity is this 2 hours a day of working out. I mean, if it's like walking, that's
Yeah.
probably a solid thing to be doing and not much to be changed there. But if it's like
HIIT training.
yeah, high interval intensity or high intensity interval training like for 2 hours a day, that's tough. I myself am trying to like dive into the world of what are my hormones actually doing with real data number type things, and what is happening to me right now while, like as you grow, like okay, let's actually finish the thought here. I can't do it. I, Neely, you've had your thyroid issues going on for several months at this point. What are we at? Like more than several months, it
Yeah,
feels
more than several
like.
months.
And before
Been
that,
a
it was the
year.
iron issues that
Mhm.
probably were part of this whole equation, right?
Mhm.
And so you've been very diligent about getting that checked out. I have not felt like there has been anything specific like my body has been going through. But now, as you continue to mature through life, things don't just stay stagnant. I'm learning,
Mhm.
and I'm not old. I mean, I'd consider old to be about 94.
Mm,
So,
no,
I'm not there yet, but
not quite.
also that doesn't mean that my body is not continuing to mature. And so
Um,
trying to
yeah, we're
learn more.
also not young. Like, I don't think we're old either, but we
No,
also can't really say we're
we're
young
not
still.
16.
Not 16, not 94, not 16.
No, and those
Somewhere.
are going to be the parameters for young versus old, just so y'all
Yeah,
know, forth and forevermore. But also, like, I'm starting to see how, like, I'm exercising consistently. My diet is doing the diety things, nourishing my body the way that has worked. And now it's like, okay, I'm noticing some weirdness. I'm noticing some different symptoms. And what
mhm,
am I going to do about that? Am I going to just in my own control just try to push through or do more harder, or I've decided to take a different route and I'm going to, be investigating more of the
mhm.
chemistry side of things, like the biochemistry things. So we're going to be sorting that all out
Yeah,
because I'm also feeling the frustration, and I sense a lot of frustration from you, Jen, and I'm so sorry that
yeah,
you're stressed about that. But
yeah, and I do
I do
feel like
appreciate you sharing it with us too,
for
because
sure.
we can hopefully encourage you to the extent that we have the capacity.
Yeah, we can at least sympathize.
Definitely can
Yeah.
sympathize.
Well, and I feel like I mean, there's always so many different voices, and there's some people that are on the spectrum of, it's all hormones. Like, we just only
Yeah.
work on hormones, and if you get your hormones perfect, everything else is perfect. And then there's others where it's like, if you just get your diet and lifestyle, sleep, light, all of that, if you get all of that perfect, everything else will be perfect. And don't worry about testing, we can do it all. Like I really strongly feel like it's both.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of influencers and doctors and people out there that do say both. So I'm not saying that they're all on one side or the other, but some
For sure.
can be. But I really do feel like it's solidly both, and they interplay. Like I was saying, exercising 2 hours a day every day for a long time can affect your hormones. Um,
Mhm.
and so it's like they definitely work together. And having both of those things in line, like being aware of both, is, I think, really
Mhm.
important. And just, hyper focusing on one thing can
Mhm.
doesn't always fix all the problems, which I definitely felt that with like my iron stuff, where I found out I was low iron, and I'm like, I need to fix the iron. And so I was kind of hyper fixated on that. And I mean, I was still digging, trying to find like the root cause of it, but I'm like, no amount of supplementation of iron actually fixed my iron problem. Like I had to, and you don't know until you know, but it's like
Yeah.
looking back, I'm like, oh, I think my hyperthyroid was probably affecting my iron. And until I got that taken care of, the iron didn't, it
It
couldn't,
wasn't gonna change.
it wasn't fully going to get fixed. And so, but then it's like, you can't know until you know. So it's all a journey trying to figure it out. But just
Right.
having that openness to just hyper focusing on one thing won't necessarily fix that one thing, which is kind of
Right.
counterintuitive.
It's
Oh,
funny
good.
how some things in health really are counterintuitive. Like,
So many things.
fat makes you fat. Hmm. Curious.
Yeah.
Less
Yeah.
eating cholesterol makes you have high cholesterol.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. You would think.
Lot of counterintuitive principles in
Yep.
health, and it can be a challenge to figure out which ones are counterintuitive for your body.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's a lot of those things where it's like it makes total sense as soon as you hear it, like calories in,
Mhm.
calories out. Yeah, that makes total sense. But then when you start digging, it's like it's so much more complicated that that original thing that makes sense almost doesn't even make sense anymore. you know?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. From Sing It, the crux of the matter is the aversion to structure. So no restrictions come with consequences. Grown folks do what needs to be done. Sometimes that includes restrictions.
It's
Absolutely.
very true.
Yes. And like being able to accept that allows for freedom. When I restrict myself to get out of bed in the morning and do the things that I need to do instead of laying around all day, my life is better.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or whenever you
Um,
have time. That makes life very much better.
yes, yes. Okay, let's see. Gary says, I hope to avoid diabetes by eliminating as much sugar as possible. So far, so good. Yep,
That is awesome.
it is. It is. Um, let's see. Risa says, it is if a lot okay, hold on. It's a lot
It's
easier
a lot
these
easier.
days to do it, but it is restrictive. Maybe do keto because we have so many more
Sure.
options. More so keto or low carb. It's easy to do these days with meal prep. Why didn't I think of meal prep then? Yeah. Yeah. Um, and she
Well,
was
I
saying
think
that she was vegetarian in an earlier comment too.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh man, vegetarian, you got to do the meal prep and like the veggie prep and
That or
soaking
else you
beans and lots of that.
piles and piles of Oreos in the pantry.
Or
That's all.
that works too. Yeah, yeah. Depends on what kind of vegan you are or vegetarian.
The
Uh,
kind of Oreos, if I was a vegetarian, that is what would happen. I would probably eat all the Oreos.
oh
Well,
yeah, for sure. I would eat all of the fruit all day long.
Ugh.
I'd be pretty happy as a fruitarian, at least for a day.
I will say this much. I feel like being in a keto friendly lifestyle allows me to have a lot more textures in my food consumption than carnivore or than, like well, I guess vegetarians can eat tons of stuff, so it doesn't really matter. But like, yeah, but then a fruitarian, there we go. It's harder to get crispy things whenever you got to wait for those banana chips to dehydrate.
True. True. Gary says, I'm glad that we have so many sugar substitutes now. Yes, a lot more than there used to be. I mean, and it's a double-edged sword, because sometimes it's like real easy to overdo stuff. But at the same time, I do think it is a net positive for a lot of people to have the options.
Absolutely.
I think it definitely can help.
And I do think that the other sort of limiting helper in that is that those store-bought foods that are, low carb or sugar free or more keto-ish, they have a higher cost associated with them. So that helps with portion control.
It should. Sometimes it doesn't, but it should.
And if the cost doesn't get you the gastrointestinal distress, will.
Yup. Okay. Infinitely Blessed says, regarding restrictions, I view it as a practice in self-discipline. Yes. Which I feel is part of a healthy lifestyle. Totally agree. Not just regarding food, but in every area of life. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. I completely agree. I also think that practicing self-discipline means that you have to actually put the reps in. And I can find myself, like, I can't speak for everybody. I can find myself putting the reps in on one day and then living out that, that self-discipline that I, prepped ahead. And then once I hit the end of that prep, then I forget, oh yeah, we got to practice those reps again.
Yeah.
So then it's just like, I guess I'm no longer going to eat any of those things because those aren't prepped anymore. So I guess it's ground beef again.
Yes. Back to good old ground beef and eggs. They're always there for us.
Always.
Infinitely Blessed again. I'm currently in the process of doing a prolonged fast and have so much peace of mind not thinking about food. And over time, my body adjusts and I don't really feel deprived. That's amazing. Isn't it crazy how you can do a fast and not feel restricted? Like that's amazing. Like that just solidifies to me that the feeling of restriction and the actual
being restricted
in the amount of foods you can eat are completely different things. That's why I really want to talk about it today, because it's so different. And one thing that I came to quite a long time ago in my dieting journey, where I'd go on really restrictive diets and then other times where I was less restrictive. And I realized that no matter what limits or restrictions I put on my diet, I felt a similar amount of restriction. So I remember being on this crazy restrictive elimination diet that was almost carnivore, but it was before carnivore was a thing. So now it's like people are like, oh, that doesn't sound restrictive. It's just carnivore.
That sounds like
but back then it was way more restrictive than even Whole30. It was like meat, and there were like 3 vegetables that you could have.
Was that the GAPS
along with your meat?
GAPS allowed you to have vegetables.
It was similar to GAPS, but it was, I think, even more restrictive than GAPS. It was a really, really, and I was having really bad, eczema stuff and skin issues, and I was like, I'm gonna go
to get rid of
that. Was before carnivore, so it's like now looking back, I'm like, I should have just gone carnivore, but it was like the most restrictive elimination diet I could find. And I did it. And one of the vegetables that you could have was carrots. But there was a certain amount. You weren't supposed to have more than a certain amount in a day. And I remember just feeling so, I don't know, deprived. And I had made some roasted carrots and I ate the entire pan. And I was like, I felt so bad. That I binged on carrots of all things. But then I was like, in the times where I'm allowing myself to have anything in the kitchen or anything I want, I'm still like digging through the fridge trying to like scratch some itch, trying to find the thing that's going to satisfy me. And at at that point, carrots wouldn't do a thing for me. And I'm still looking for something else. And so I
Yeah.
was like, no matter what restriction I put on myself, it's like the level of oh, I don't the level of feeling restricted was always the same or similar.
Yeah. You felt
That
like you were in
makes
a
sense.
mental prison that I can't find what I want. I'm trapped right here.
Yes, like I was never fully satisfied no matter what I allowed myself to have. And so I at that point I kind of got rid of the idea that if I just allow myself to have more variety, I'll feel less restricted. I just realized that that wasn't true for me. And not that I mean there is a point at which it's true. If I
Yeah.
fasted forever, I would feel restricted. Um but it's like there's something else besides what foods you allow yourself that for me that translate to me feeling restricted or not restricted, and I haven't fully figured it out. um but it was just that recognition that I'm like, even if I was eating anything I want, I still am searching for something to fill some void. Like, what is that? And and then at the time when I'm on this super restrictive diet, I feel like I have to eat this whole pan of carrots because there's something that I'm, missing. And I was like, what the heck? Like, no matter what diet I'm on, like there's some feeling that remains the same.
Sure. The subjective doesn't change to correlate and correspond with the objective in
Yes.
those moments.
Yes. And I do feel like where I'm at now, I don't have that as much as I used to. I think that feeling was more associated with deprivation, low calorie, maybe like just
Sure.
not feeding myself enough or like trying to diet to lose weight. So I'm like just under eating. Maybe it was more connected to under eating. Uh,
Sure.
because it's not like I live that way now. I mean, there are
Yeah.
moments where I'm like craving something or, looking for something more, but um I do think that had more to do with the low calorie deprivation, starve myself to a certain size type mentality.
Yeah.
But it was eye opening where I was like, it's not the list of foods that makes me feel free
Mm-hmm.
or the list of foods that make me feel deprived. There's something else there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so complicated.
This has been a really good therapy session so far, y'all.
I guess so.
We're just talking
Uh,
through it all. That's all we're
yeah,
doing.
yeah. Um, Infinitely blessed again. There is freedom in that. I feel so blessed to have everything I want and need available to me, but not feeling a desperation to have it. That's
Mm.
that's really important. Yeah.
Well, and there's plenty of YouTube creators out there or just content creators at large who will consistently say it's all about mindset. Like your mindset is the foundation. And, if you look through the Bible, it talks about like your mindset. What's your focus on? The
Yeah.
thing you think about is the thing that you're going to be focused on, and that's going to be your future.
Yeah.
Because you're going to act that way. So if you focus on the restriction and focus on the deprivation, then that's what you're going to feel because that's what you're constantly focused on. And I'm not saying that that's going to be perfect for everybody, like
Yeah.
you can avoid it and say, I am so, I'm, I'm so well cared for in this time that I have no lack at all when it comes to food choices. I mean, and you can still actually like be lacking in something. So, it's not exactly ideal. And
Yeah.
and it also tends to go way too far in the whole like prosperity concept where if you think it, then you are it. And that's not real either.
Right.
But, where you put your focus on, that can really affect the way that your feelings can
Yes.
follow.
Oh, yeah, and it's kind of like what we were talking about with your hormones and your lifestyle stuff.
Yeah.
They work together. So it's like, yes, I don't believe that you can just imagine something into existence, put it out in the universe and it comes to you. But our attitude and our focus definitely
Mhm.
affects things.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a both. You can choose to have a good attitude about things, and it actually has an effect on the situation, has effect on yourself.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not just one or the other. It's
Mhm.
both.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so don't ignore either part of it.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Oh, Evelyn was watching keto chow challenge videos, and then she was missing the live. No, don't miss the live.
No. Well, we're glad you're here.
Yes, we are.
I'm sure
Let's
that
see.
was probably a while ago.
Yeah, it definitely was. I'm way behind.
Sometimes we find a topic and
I know.
we don't stop the train. The
I
train
feel like
stops.
this hour has flown by.
It has.
Yes. Rickman says, I went to my aunt's 88th birthday last night, kept my food keto, fish and coleslaw, since we were in a restaurant. Not clean, but okay. Yep, for sure. But I had a piece of birthday cake and I am paying for it today. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said before, we all have to decide what's worth it
That's
for
right.
us in our situation. And sometimes we find out afterwards that it wasn't worth it.
Sure.
And
Sure.
but what I always try to do in those situations is learn from it, because then it's not wasted. Because there's a lot of times where you make a decision and then you look back and you're like, I wish I hadn't have made that decision, and you kind of beat yourself up about it as if it was a total loss. But if you can get wisdom from it,
Right.
then it wasn't a loss. You learned something and it has benefited you. So you can be
Mhm.
happy about that. And
Indeed.
you've got to, enjoy.
Celebrate.
Yeah, enter in socially. Like there are benefits to that for sure,
Lot.
even with food that is less than ideal. Okay, let's see. Um, okay, here's one from Go Go Kimchi. For me, fasting helps me calm the food noise down. Yeah, that's amazing. I always wanted to be that kind of person, and I tried so hard to do the fasting and because I read the appetite correction
Mm.
book. I forget the guy's name, but he was really into the intermittent fasting, and that was his whole thing, was that it calms the food noise down. And it didn't. I experienced a tiny bit of that. Like there were moments where I felt that, but overall, it wasn't the thing for me that did that. But I know it does that for certain people, and so I'm jealous.
Steve over at Life, or was it Lean Body Mind,
Uh-huh. Serious
aka
keto.
Serious Keto?
Mhm.
He did his 150 some odd hour fast, and I was able to hop onto one of his lives at the very beginning of it, and I was like, "You're a stronger person than me. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
No, I got to be paid lots of many dollars." And
Maybe he is. Maybe that's the how he got through it. He's getting some money from somewhere.
if it's like the jump rope for harp jumpathon where you get sponsored to jump rope for so many minutes or so many jumps or whatever, like if we've got to be motivated for it, I mean, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
also, I have a family that eats food a lot, and he was
Yeah,
talking about how he can only do that really whenever the family is
that's true.
not present, and that is just, that's not my season of life, and I admire him for being
Yeah.
capable of doing that and then choosing to do it, but
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. Well, like last year, yeah, I did my sardine fast
Yes.
and I did the keto chow challenge. And I chose to do those when Jeff was out of town.
Mhm.
And two of the kids. So it made it so much easier. Like it's
Yeah.
ridiculous how much easier it is when you're not like having people ask you for food all day and having to
That's
cook
right.
every day. Yeah. Let's see. Sing It says, N equals one. No, no one size fits all, but honesty is key. Decided to heck with it. I'm eating watermelon. Good for you. Oh, never mind.
Oh no.
The
The
pain
rest
in
of
my hips told me why I can't have sugar and fruit. So I chose to restrict fruit. Yep.
that's
It
the
was a
way it
learning
goes.
experience. And now you know. Because, what if you had had the watermelon and it was perfectly fine? And you spent
Yeah.
your whole life not eating watermelon because you thought it would be bad and it wasn't. So
Yeah.
you learned, and that's great. Ron's Keto Cafe is here. Hello. Let's see. A lot of talking with each other.
We love that, by the way.
Yes, for sure. Um, yes, there were no healthy alternatives to sugary treats in the 70s and 80s. Everything was equal or fake sweeteners. That off taste was disgusting. Yeah. And like for the most part, the treats made back then were fat free, not sugar free. So you could find all kinds of fat free goodies. You know how
Ooh.
well that worked out for everybody.
All those like snack wells and Fiber One products.
Yes. Okay. Jackie has a question. For me, how did you choose Jonathan Shane for your health coach experiment?
Ooh,
Yeah.
I know. Ooh, I know.
Okay.
I know.
Go ahead.
You pulled his name out of a hat.
That's it. Yeah. I just opened up the phone book.
Phone,
Yeah.
phone book roulette.
No, I had met Jonathan at KetoCon, a year, almost a year
Back
and a
in
half ago
April of
now.
23.
Yep. And I really liked his approach. I really appreciated his um not being so dogmatic on keto where it's like sugar is poison, because that never really sat really well with me. And so his open-mindedness to keto and carnivore, but then also using carbs, whole food carbs when needed. Like I just felt like it's a really balanced approach, very much looking at the individual person and what they need rather than just like this cookie cutter diet works for everybody. I think he does a really good job of uh, refining things for his specific clients. I also really appreciate his focus on hormones. Like I was saying
Mhm.
before, when the hormones are out of whack, all the exercise and diet and lifestyle factors can almost, I'm not going to say they mean nothing, but they can almost mean nothing when it's overshadowed by some major hormonal imbalance. So he definitely does not gloss over that. That's like one of the first things that he wants to do is get hormones tested and really dig deep into that and then build the lifestyle stuff on top of that. Because when that's out of order, it's just like, what are we even doing with our lives?
Yeah.
So just that it was a very holistic approach, a very tailored to the individual person. And we became friends. And so it wasn't like I had a whole list of health coaches and I was like, this one, not this one, like I didn't do that. It was more of the opportunity came around and I just really appreciated his approach. So that's that. The rest is history. Let's see. We are getting close to an hour here. So let me scan through, make sure um, we get everybody's comments. Let's see, what's this one here? Celia says, I think both and like I can only handle a couple problems at a time. So keep on keeping on. Oh dear, and mental health. Oh dear, the heat. Yeah, I think like
What,
things can
Celia,
pile on.
were you responding to Jen about like all of
Oh,
the things maybe
maybe.
perhaps? I
Yeah.
mean, I agree. We can't handle a lot of problems at one time effectively, especially. So, you
Yes.
know, trying to trying to just focus on one or two things at a time is really, really useful. Um, so
Yeah, and like all of these different things coming at us can affect our hormones, like we were talking about with too much exercise. It's like too much of any stress and heat that can be a stress. We're having a heat wave here for sure, and it's just like, oof, yeah. It and so doing what you can to mitigate the stress and have ways to work on it, and then also like have your body be in a place of resilience where hormones are balanced and you know you can handle things like it's a delicate balance, but yes. So it always, when one problem comes, it's like usually you get dumped on with multiple um eh, and that's life. Like you're never going to completely get away from stress, but like finding those tools to become resilient so that
mhm.
in those times you don't get completely destroyed. That is the goal. That's what I'm working on. But it's not easy.
As Kermit the
Yes,
Frog says, it's not easy being green.
that's true. Um, yes, Mary says, I like to have the mindset of what I get to eat rather than what I can't eat. Yes, it's funny when we were talking about restriction the last couple of weeks, the amount of times that bacon was brought up was very interesting to me.
Countless.
Because
Countless.
when you get to have bacon, man, those restrictions, those other restrictions don't feel so bad.
That's right.
It's a very good tool for not feeling restricted. Dustin is here last minute.
Well, it's about time you showed up, Dustin.
He did a 21-day fast without being paid. Yeah, you
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 did
messed up
get
on
ripped
that one.
off.
You messed up on that one.
You got ripped off real bad.
Yeah, you need to talk to Steve. I'm kidding. Steve did not. I'm sure he did not get paid for his
This is
fast.
no different than us being the
Total
idea behind like all of the things that everybody else should be doing. Listen, all I know is that I'm an instigator. And if you're not getting paid to fast, then what are you doing with your life?
Exactly. Yes. All right. We should probably hop off of
We
here. Thank you everyone for joining us on the coffee chat today. We will be back next week, same time, same place.
hopefully with a fresh and new topic.
Yes. Yeah. So wait, first,
We have both been focused on this for
did we
so long.
did we talk about anything close to what you were thinking of?
Yeah, it was about the levels of freedom when it comes to restriction.
Okay, good. Glad we were on the same page. Oh, I love it. Okay.
We can open up a fresh can of worms
Yep.
next time.
If anyone has any ideas, put them down in the comments and we will try to figure out something fun to talk about.
That's right. Maybe we'll do some hot takes like sometime before the summer is over since it's, heat of